So now I'm going to do the second part of the question, which is the drilling. So we will need to use a new tool. So tool, then drill, then diameter is 30, the point angle is 120, and the height is 60. We will change the color so that it will help us differentiate from the milling and the drilling. So we use green this time. And 12. And we begin our codes. We'll start by telling the machine to start spinning. We'll set the spindle speed to 1000. Then we'll raise the tool 5 millimeters above the block. Then we'll set the feed rate to 60. Now the cut is in the middle. It's in the middle of the block, so the coordinates are 150 because the width is 200 and the length is 100. So after we've raised the tool above the block, we'll tell the machine to go to 100 or x100, y50. So I run this. The tool is in the middle of the block. Now that we are above the block, using G01, we shall tell the machine to drill inside. Now the height of the block is 40. Then we are making a cut which is through all. So if you are cutting inside or drilling inside, the height, we'll set the height to 50, so it will cut completely through. So it will be Z minus 50. So when you look at it like this, you see that the machine will cut through the block and to allow us to do the through all extruded cut. So now that we've cut through the block, we'll raise the tool 5 millimeters above the block again. And then we'll go back to the home, x0, y0, and then we'll tell the machine to stop spinning. And lastly, we will terminate the program. Now, when you are doing CNC codes for 2 programs, that is milling and drilling, you need to pay attention to how you move from one tool to another. So when you finish the first part, when you finish the milling, we did not put the M30. You just leave it as M06, which will tell the machine to stop spinning, or tell the spindle to stop spinning. Before you come in and you start the second part, which is the drilling, and then you just call the tool and you set the color code. You set the color and then you start coding. Now the G90, G21, G95, it applies to both of the tools. That is, if you put it just after the stock block. If you put the general settings G90, G21, G95, which is the referencing the units of measurement and then the feed rate. If you put it here, it means that to apply for the whole program, every tool you would use, this is the general settings it will use. But if you put it below the color or below the tool, it means that for this tool, these are the settings you would use, and it will not affect the second tool you would use, or the second drilling or milling you will do. So it must always be above or just after the stock block, like that. In this example, we have this example is in two parts. We have the milling and the drilling. So the first thing you need to do is identify which one is the milling, then which one is the drilling. When we are milling, we are removing material. Then when you are drilling, we are cutting into the machine most of the time to make a hole. So the four circles are the drilling bit, and the semicircle cut is the milling. So we'll start with the drilling. Now for the drilling, we need to identify the 4 points of the holes which we will be drilling. So now the length of the block is 200 and here is 160. So that means this side and this side are both 20-20, so that you add up to 40 and the 160 to give you the 200. So here's 20. Now they've given us the distance from here, which is our origin, to the center of the circle, which is 15. So right away we know that the coordinate for the center of our circle, our first circle, is 20 and 15. Likewise for this circle, it will be the 20 plus the 160, which will become 180. So from this side all the way to this side will be 180. So the coordinates for the center of our second circle is 180, and the same y, which is 15. Then we move on to this circle. It has the same x, so 20, and the y, we know that from here to here is 15. Likewise from here to here is 15. So it will be 100 minus 15, which will give us 85. So from the bottom here to the top here would be 85 millimeters. So 20, 85. Then for our last circle, the coordinates to have the same x, which is 180, and the y would be 85. And like that, we have our 4 points for drilling. Then we move on to the milling. In this example, we are going to be using G03, which is anti-clockwise movement. Then we will cut across with using a radius in order to do the cut. So we need to identify our starting point, then our end point. I have chosen to start from here, this point, and we'll cut across to this point, like that. Now in his examples, what he does normally is that in order to find the length either on the y-axis or on the x-axis, he makes certain features horizontally aligned with certain features. So if you pay attention, you'll see that the top here of the circle is coincident with the middle of the arc. Our first point of the arc is coincident to that point. So that means the length from here to here is the y coordinate for the center point of the arc, or first point on the arc, where we'll be starting from and using it as a reference to go to the next point. So we know here is 15. Then when you come to the question, you see that the circles have a diameter of 20 millimeters. That means when you take the circle here, from here to here is 20. So the radius obviously would be 10. So that means we move from here to here, which is 15. Then we move to the top, it's an additional 10 millimeters. So our y coordinate for the arc would be 25, 10 plus 15, and the x is in the center to be half of the 200, and it's 100. So you always need to pay attention to other features and try and see how they are aligned with other features, so you can use them as a reference for the length. So you've seen that our starting point here has an x of 100 and then a y of 25. Now our endpoint, so it's the same thing. If here is 25, that means from here to the top of the block will be 25. So it becomes 100 minus 25. That means our endpoint would be 100, because it's the same x-axis, and then 75, which is 100 minus 25. Now the radius. During this question, when we tried the radius of 30, it didn't work. The bend wasn't the same, so he changed it to 25. So the radius in this example would be 25. And now that we found the coordinates for our 4 circles, which we will be using for the drilling, now we found our coordinates for the milling. We will now go on and type the codes. We start with defining our stock. So stock block, and then our width was 200, our length was 100, and our height was 40. So 0, 0, 40. And now just under the stock block, because we are doing with a 2-part code, we have the drilling and the milling, we have to define the general settings just under the stock block, so it applies to everything. So we shall be using absolute referencing as usual. Our unit of measurement is millimeters, so G21, then G95, which is the feed rate code. The first tool we shall be using is the drill. Our diameter is 20, so our point angle is 118, and our height is 25. An easier way to help remember the settings for each tool is that the drill is the one with 3 conditions, and then the mill is the one with 4. Then we will set our color. The color is not for the machine, but it's for the software, so that you can identify which part is which. Maybe in the exam, it may tell you that let your drilling be in a red color, then let your milling be in a blue color, and that is for the software, not the machine. So now we finished our stock setting, we finished the tool, and then we finished the color. You start with telling the spindle to start spinning, M03. Let's say we will set the spindle speed to 8,000. Next, we would raise the spindle. Okay, so when I rebuild it, the stock appears. You will tell the tool you raise the tool 5 millimeters above the block. Then the first time, if you remember, the first time you do the G00 code is the first time you place is where you place the feed rate. Our feed rate here is 80. So run. It doesn't appear until you tell the tool to move somewhere. So then we'll tell the tool to go to our first point, the drill, which was X20, Y25. Then we run it and then the tool appears there. So I switch to the top view. See how the tool is at that point. Now we are above the tool. Like this, we need to tell the tool to cut inside. The question, we are cutting to a depth of 20. So G01 and then Z minus 20. And the tool cuts inside. Next, we need to raise it, go to the next point, cut inside, raise it, go to the next point, cut inside, raise it. So you have to visualize how the tool would work, and to help you in identifying how you write the code. So now we've cut inside G00, then Z5 to raise it again, so that when we are moving to our next point, it doesn't cut through the block. N7. Now we move to our next point, which is X118. It's the same Y25. We don't type it. Then it moves to the next point. So G01, Z minus 20. Cuts inside. Then we'll just repeat the process. Raise. Next line of code, go to the next point, which is X20, Y85. Now that we are at the point G01 and Z minus 20, and it cuts inside. Same Y, we are now moving to the X180, Y85, the same Y, so we don't type it. Then lastly, we tell the machine to drill inside at that point. So now we are done with our 4 holes. We raise the tool, above the block. Then we tell it to go to the home. Let's set our home to X minus 40 and then Y0, so that it moves from the diagram like that. Now after we've sent the tool back to the home, then stop it. M06 to stop spinning the spindle. Then we move on to the next part of the code, which is the milling. So we call the mill tool, which is 2\mill. As I said, the mill is the one with the 4 conditions: the diameter, the corner radius, the height, and then the taper angle. So in the question, our diameter was 10, corner radius is 0, height is 30, and we have a taper angle of 0. When we set our color, let's use green, like that. So first code, N18, our 18th line of code, we will still tell the spindle to start spinning. Let's set the spindle speed to about 2000. Then next thing we'll do is raise it above the block, and that's where we put our feed rate, so 60. Then we'll tell it to go to the point where we are cutting, which was X100, Y25. like that. Now our tool appears at that point. Now the next thing we'll do is we'll tell them, using G01, we tell them tool to cut inside the machine. So G01 -20, so we are cutting to a depth of -20 millimeters. Now the next thing we need to do is the circular cut. Now when you look at the diagram, from where we are, the tool will be moving anti-clockwise, and the code for anti-clockwise is G03. Now if you are started from the top of the cut and we are coming downwards, it would have been a clockwise movement, then we would have had to use G02. But in this case, we are from our starting point to the end point. It's an anti-clockwise movement. Now the format of circular cut is G02 or G03, depending on which direction you are going. And we have the X of the end point. Our end point is 100, X100, Y75. So the X of the endpoint, the Y of the endpoint, and the radius of the circular cut. So G03, because our cut is anti-clockwise, X100, Y75, and our radius was 25. Then it makes the circular cut like that. So after we are done, G00Z5, we raise it. We send the tool to the home, X -14, Y0. And here is when we would tell the spindle to stop spinning and end the program completely. So to end the program for everything, it's telling the machine that we are no longer coding. So that is how we did the fourth example in class.